West Virginia football team tomorrow night is hosting BYU. It's a second meeting between these two schools, second meeting ever, and the first in Morgantown. Tony Caridi will be calling the game. He joins us on Metro News Talkline. Good morning, Tony.
Good morning to you, Mr. Hoppy.
So you are reporting, as others have reported this morning, that BYU will be out without its quarterback.
I'm reporting on their reports. Yes, I am.
Okay, go.
And Keaton Slovis is their transfer quarterback that had been starting for them. We saw him last year in the season opener against Pitt. He played last week against Texas, but we are told that due to injuries will not be available tomorrow, and so they will go with a junior college quarterback by the name of Jake Retzloff, who has not thrown a pass yet this season, joined the program in the offseason. And so that is a significant piece of news, to the point where it raised the betting line by about 3 points, up to like 13 and a half points, favoring WVU.
Yeah, I saw that this morning. I wonder the opening line was 10, and I thought maybe that Vegas had some insight earlier about Slovis's availability, but the fact that it goes up 3 points now that Slovis is out, maybe they didn't. I don't know.
Yeah. And they've also had issues at running back. L.J. Martin has also been nagging. Injuries have kept him back. Whether or not, that running back core is healthy also is up for discussion. And so that's kind of, I think, a lot to do with this.
Okay. What about the West Virginia perspective? You talked to Neil Brown last night on his coach's show. What did you pick up from him?
Well, unfortunately, right side tackle Doug Nestor is going to, in all likelihood, miss the game. He injured himself, played 12 last week at UCF, getting better, but probably not good enough to go tomorrow. So as a result, the Swiss utility knife that is Nick Malone will jump over, and he will play and start at right tackle, which is just significant because Nick has been invaluable to this team, filling in these holes that we've had during the season on the offensive line. He also said that Hudson Clement will be back into action. He was slowed by an ankle injury in the Oklahoma State game, missed last week against UCF. He also did say that backup linebacker Jairo Favris is out for the season with a leg injury, so that will take him out of the mix, and he wasn't available last week as well. So that's kind of where we are from an injury standpoint.
Tony, what about the matchup? West Virginia wants to run, and probably last week was the most success they've had this season running, involving the running backs and the quarterback. What is the matchup of West Virginia's run game versus BYU defense?
Well, Hoppy, West Virginia's run game has been doing well. They lead the country right now in consecutive rushing games with over 140 yards at 11 games, and so that's significant. So West Virginia is obviously pointed toward that. BYU is a solid defense. Neil has talked all week that he really likes their length on defense. This is one of those teams, Hoppy, that traditionally they're just not going to beat themselves, right? They're not going to commit a lot of penalties. They're not loose with the football. They don't turn it over. So it's one of those games where you have to earn it. But at the same time, with West Virginia coming off the rushing performance that it had last week against UCF, I think they feel about as good as they have all season right now in their run game, despite the fact that Doug Nestor isn't going to start. And then you got the quarterback, situation here. Garrett Green has quickly, taken a hold of this offense now that he's healthy, and you're seeing what it's mean.
Yeah.
3 touchdowns on the ground last week. He's throwing the ball well. He's among the nation's leaders for length of pass completion. We have always said that he can throw the long ball well. Now he's starting to hit those intermediate targets that perhaps had a little bit too much gas on those passes early on in the season. And, to use the cliche, he is coming into his own. He's maturing in front of our eyes. And so if you can get some help, I think, from the receiving core who had some drops last week, we're positioning ourselves for the final 4 games to be in a good position here.
Tony, I think the story of the season so far is Garrett Green, because how many times in the offseason did you all on Sportsline or on Three Guys talk about, well, Garrett Green's going to be the guy, but is he, can he really be the guy? And he worried about turnover issues and decision making. And he has exceeded, maybe not to the coaches, but I think to casual observers, he has more than exceeded expectations and taken control of this team and been a real leader of this team.
Right, both on and off the field,
Yeah.
and you're exactly right. We talked about it a ton that we were worried about Garrett turning the ball over, and I think that was also Neil Brown's worry that he was going to turn the ball over. And he has been, really, really good in that department. He has checked all the boxes that we were concerned about, and it's good to see. It's really, really good to see because it's fun to watch these guys come in. And, Neil was talking about it last night, and people can say, well, why didn't he play earlier? Well, he didn't play earlier because he wasn't ready earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't ready earlier because mentally and even physically to that point, he just had to get to where he was. And so now that he's there, I think, Hoppy, he's at that point that you always hope for as a player, and that is he no longer, I think, is thinking about what do I do here, what do I do here. He's playing.
Yeah.
And when you can make that transition into just playing the game, then you're on. And that's why they are where they are right now.
Tony Caridi is with us. Tony, did you ever do a game? You've done a ton of basketball games. Did you ever do a game where Bobby Knight was the coach of the other team?
Yeah. West Virginia played him in Albuquerque in the NCAA tournament. When we beat him, John Beilein, in a really good game that propelled us into that matchup to go to the Final Four against Louisville in the Elite Eight. So that was the one. I have this lasting memory. How long do you have here? 40 seconds?
No, you got a couple minutes. Go ahead.
I'm in college at the Omni in Atlanta.
Okay.
And Syracuse was playing Virginia in the first, and this was the Sweet 16. And Syracuse is playing Virginia, and that was the year after Ralph Sampson left. And so Syracuse played the first game, and we kept our seats, which were right on press row, right next to the bench. North Carolina played Indiana in the next game, and that was the Michael Jordan, North Carolina, and that was the night that Dan Dockich shut down Michael Jordan, the infamous game. And right before the starting lineups were either done or just before they're getting ready for the starting lineups, Knight goes into a catcher's position in front of his team. And all five of his starters are staring at him. And he stared at them. And he did not say a single word, literally, for over a minute. And it might have been 90 seconds to 2 minutes. He just stared at them as they were waiting for the signal to come out. Didn't say a word. But his face and his eyes told the whole story. They went out there and beat Michael Jordan and won the game.
Wow. That's it. Yeah. And Dan Dockich was on that team, and Dan Dockich shut down Michael Jordan?
He guarded Jordan. It's a historically famous game that he did a really super good defensive job on Jordan, and they beat him.
And in West Virginia connection, Dan Dockich was briefly the head coach at West Virginia. So always a West Virginia connection.
Always. Yeah, absolutely. Always a connection.